The human left behind in the sand of victory. The battlefield was silent now. Dust hung in the air like fog. Pieces of metal, broken weapons, and burnt armor lay scattered across the valley. The alien banners of victory fluttered in the wind, but the ground was soaked in blood, human and alien both. His name was Corporal Elias Kane. He lay half buried in the sand, barely breathing. His left leg was shattered, his armor cracked. One eye was swollen shut. He had fought until the last energy round in his rifle. Then he used his fists. Then a rock. Then nothing. His last memory was a flash grenade and a cold silence. Now, the only thing he felt was pain. And something heavier. Failure. Elias opened, his good eye slowly. The sky above was green with two suns. This wasn't Earth. This wasn't home. And he wasn't supposed to be alive. A rumble shook the ground, not thunder. Footsteps, big, armored, organized. The sound of marching. He turned his head with effort. Through the shimmering heat, a group of alien soldiers approached in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed silver blue. Tall, thin bodies, forearms, red skin, the Zarnai, the most ruthless warriors in the galaxy. Elias tried to sit up, but he couldn't. His body didn't respond. "We found one," one of the Zarnai warriors said in a deep voice. Another stepped closer, studying Elias like a scientist, observing an insect. "He breathes. Barely. Shall we finish him?" The leader raised a hand. "No, he is not dead. He did not flee. He stayed and fought while others ran. Look around you. These scars are from him." They noticed the crushed helmet nearby, the deep gash in one alien's armor. Even with a broken body, Elias had taken 3 of them down before falling. "Take him," the leader said. "He will be worth something." Elias's mind was foggy, but he understood enough. They weren't killing him. They were capturing him. He was lifted roughly, arms tied behind his back. A collar snapped around his neck. He didn't scream. He had done that earlier. Now he only watched as the aliens dragged him across the battlefield like a trophy. Behind them, banners were raised. A victory celebration had begun, but far away from the lights and music, Elias Kane, the last human left on this front, was being loaded into a dark metal cage. The cage was cold, made of black steel. The only light came from a tiny vent above. Elias sat in silence. His body shook from blood loss, but his mind stayed sharp. Hours passed, maybe days. Time had no meaning. Then, the door slid open with a hiss. A different alien entered. Not a Zarnai, shorter, thinner, dressed in fine robes, with golden rings hanging from his long ears. "You are the human called Elias Kane," the creature said. Elias didn't answer. No need to speak. "I know who you are. Your kind is rare now. Most were lost in the Eastern battles. Some ran, some surrendered, but not you." Elias coughed, his throat dry. "What do you want?" The alien smiled, showing too many teeth. "Not me. The galaxy wants you, or at least the kind of story you represent. Glory, pain, courage, suffering. People pay well for that." "Then kill me," Elias said quietly. The alien leaned closer. "Oh no, no. You're not going to die. You're going to fight. Not for your planet, not for your army. You're going to fight for entertainment." Elias stared at him. "You'll be part of the tournament of blood. Warriors from hundreds of species will come, and you, human, will be the wild card. They'll bid to fight you, to break you, to test themselves." The alien turned to leave. "But first, we need you alive, and just broken enough to look tragic." The door closed. Elias sat alone again. But something inside him had shifted. They didn't know it yet. They thought he was defeated. They thought he was just a piece of history to display. But deep inside his chest, something old was waking up. Something human. Not fear, not rage. Something colder. Something patient. He looked up at the vent and whispered, You should have left. Me in the sand. The auction of flesh and fire. The ship carrying Elias Kane flew through deep space, silent and dark. It was a prison with engines, a metal coffin that hummed like a dying beast. Inside, Elias lay in chains. Not once had he screamed, not once had he begged. He had learned something about pain. If you don't show it, they can't feed on it. The Zarnay guards treated him like a relic. They didn't speak to him. They poked, fed, scanned, and locked him like a beast. To them, he was not a man anymore. He was a prize. But Elias still had his mind, and he remembered every insult, every face, every scar. The ship landed on a floating city in orbit around a red giant star. It was called Vorthax, known across galaxies as the market of monsters, slaves, weapons, beasts, drugs, and blood. Everything had a price, especially humans. As the cage opened, Elias was yanked out by 2 armored guards. A chain was looped around his neck like a leash. His hands were cuffed behind his back. Alien creatures stared as he passed. Tall ones with glowing eyes. Short ones, with claws for hands. Some laughed, some spat. Some whispered his name like a ghost story. A real Terran soldier. Still breathing? Look at the scars. He's beautiful in a broken way. He was taken through tunnels lit with flickering lights and symbols written in alien blood. The stench was awful. Rot, oil, and sweat. They walked through giant iron doors until they reached the auction pit. It looked like an arena. One side was filled with audience seats, packed with alien nobles, warlords, merchants, and black market kings. Many wore strange robes, armor, or glowing crowns. Some had skin like stone. Others pulsed with biolight. They all came for one reason: to buy living tools of war. The auctioneer, a 6-armed creature with a floating eye, stood in the center, under a spotlight. "Welcome to round 4 of the warrior auction," he roared, voice echoing through the pit. "Tonight, we offer something rare, something historic." A spotlight hit Elias. The crowd went silent. Even the ones who were laughing earlier stopped. "A human soldier of Earth," the auctioneer continued, "captured during the fall of the Tanari front. He is wounded, but alive, unbroken, undefeated. Starting, bid. 10,000 blood coins." A long silence. Then, 15,000, shouted a snake-skinned baron. 22, barked a giant with tusks. 30,000, purred a noble queen with ice-blue skin. The bids climbed fast. Voices echoed from every direction. Some bidders stood up, some banged their fists. Others sent silent signals through blinking drones. Elias stood still. His chest rose slowly. His eyes, half closed, studied the crowd, not in fear, but in cold judgment. And then, everything stopped. From the shadowed upper deck, a new voice spoke, soft, steady, female, 65,000. The room turned. There, leaning forward under a black hood, sat a young alien woman. Her skin glowed faint gold under the moonlight. Her eyes shimmered like liquid metal. She said no more. The auctioneer choked. 65 sold. Hammer struck. The cage door opened. Elias was led by guards toward the private chambers, still chained. But this time, the stares from the crowd were different. Not mockery, but quiet fear. Something about the woman unsettled even the most violent of killers. In a cold glass room, the alien woman sat alone. The guards shoved Elias in and closed the door behind him. For the first time, he saw her clearly. She was young, not much older than 20 in human years. Elegant, graceful, and armed, strapped with thin daggers under her coat. "Sit," she said. Elias didn't move. "You want to kill me?" he asked. She smiled softly. "No. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be breathing. Then why buy me?" "Because I'm not like the others." He raised an eyebrow. She leaned forward. "I know what they want from you. They want a show. They want to see a human bleed. But I want something else. He narrowed his eyes. "I want you to win," she whispered. A silence passed between them. "What are you?" he asked. "Royalty," she said. "Daughter of a war queen, raised with blades, not silk." "Then why me?" "Because you stayed behind when your unit ran, because you fought when no one asked you to, and because they called you broken. But I see something else." He looked away. "You hate them," she added. "Good. You'll need that." "For what?" "For what comes next." She reached into her robe and pulled out a thin crystal key. She knelt and unlocked his cuffs, then stood. "Your training begins at dawn. You have one goal: survive. If you do, the galaxy will hear your name again. If you don't, you'll die in silence like the others." She walked toward the exit, pausing in the doorway. "My name is Zura," she said. "Remember it. Because you and we're going to change everything." The door hissed shut behind her. Elias sat still for a moment, then looked down at his open hands. They were still shaking, but they were free, and for the first time since the war ended, he wanted to use them again. The princess with war in her blood. The suns had not yet risen over Vorthak Station, but the underground training dome blazed with artificial light. Thick air, burning metal, and distant screams filled the silence. The arena below was not for sport. It was for survival. Elias Kane stood shirtless, his wounds still fresh. Around him stood 5 alien beasts, each from different worlds, each stronger, faster, more evolved for war. But he did not blink. On the balcony above, behind a thin layer of protective glass, sat Zura, the alien princess who had bought him like a weapon. Only she didn't see a weapon. She saw a spark no one else could. A seed that, if grown right, could shake the foundations of the entire galactic order. A trainer stood beside her, a tall creature with scales, one eye, and a robotic arm. "This one will die in 60 seconds, it grunted. "He's too slow. Too soft." Zura said nothing. The whistle blew, and below, the beasts charged. Elias moved like a ghost. He didn't have strength, he didn't have size, but he had something the others didn't. Instinct. Earthborn instinct, sharpened in jungles, deserts, and ruined cities, not trained in labs or simulation pods. He ducked under the first beast's claw, rolled between 2 others, and grabbed a shard of broken metal from the dirt. One slice. Blood sprayed. He spun around, smashed the shard into a soft part behind another creature's neck. It collapsed. By the time the final beast reached him, Elias was already behind it, slamming its head into the wall with a grunt. Then silence. 1 minute had passed. 5 bodies surrounded him, breathing heavy, chest rising. Zura smiled. The trainer turned to her. This changes things." "Yes," she said. "It does." After the fight, Elias was taken to a private chamber, this time without chains. Food was waiting, a rare kindness. He didn't eat. Instead, he sat by the wall and stared at the ceiling. When the door opened, he didn't look up. Zura entered quietly. "That was impressive," she said. He shrugged. "They were stupid." "They were genetically engineered, still stupid." Zura knelt beside him. "You don't talk much, do you? Talking's for politicians. You're not a soldier anymore." He turned his head. "No. Now I'm a tool." "No," she whispered. "You're a message." He narrowed his eyes. "A message that humans are not broken, not forgotten, and not finished." "Why do you care?" he asked. "Your people helped destroy us." She looked away. "My mother did. I did not." He watched her for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "You're not like the others. I was born in war," she said. "I never saw peace, never knew kindness. I trained with soldiers, not servants, and I learned one truth. Those in power only understand pain." "So that's what you want me to give them?" "No," she said. "I want you to make them fear you." Days turned into weeks. Zura trained Elias personally, not with soft words or gentle hands, but with the brutal discipline of a war princess. He woke to alarms, trained for hours, fought in shadow pits, learned alien tactics, weapons, pressure points, weaknesses. She taught him how to see, how to strike, how to endure. In turn, he taught her something too, how humans think, how they adapt, how they break rules and make their own. They began to trust each other, and in the quiet hours when no one watched, Zura would stare at him, not as a warrior but as a man. But peace never lasts long on Vorthax. One night, as Elias slept, an explosion shook the floor. Shouts, alarms, red lights. Zura burst into his chamber, sword drawn. "Get up. What's happening?" "They're here. The Blood Syndicate. They want you dead before the tournament begins." Elias grabbed a weapon from the wall, a long, curved blade. "How many?" "Too many." He grinned. "Perfect." They ran through the corridors, dodging blasts and ambushes. Syndicate assassins dropped from ceilings, rose from vents, fired plasma darts through the smoke. But they didn't expect a human with a blade. Elias fought like a storm, quick, brutal, precise. One by one, the attackers fell. Zura moved beside him, her daggers flashing like lightning. Together they carved a path through the chaos. Finally, they reached the exit tunnel, but a massive armored warrior blocked the way, twice Elias's size. Cybernetic. Red eyes. "Give me the Terran," it growled. Zura stepped forward. "You want him? Take me first." The warrior laughed. "Your blood's worth more." As it charged, Elias stepped between them. He threw his blade. It spun through the air and struck the warrior in the neck joint. The beast fell to its knees, choking. Elias grabbed Zura's hand. "Move." They made it to a safe zone beneath the station, an ancient shelter once used during radiation storms. Inside, Zura collapsed against the wall. Her arm was bleeding. "You're hurt," Elias said. "Not as bad as him," she replied. With a smirk, he sat across from her. "They know who I am now," he said. "Good. That means I'm not just a fighter anymore." "No," she said. "You're a symbol now." He looked at her for the first time, her voice softened. "They fear you, Elias. Not because you're strong, but because you're still human, and you refuse to break." He nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, he whispered, "And they haven't seen anything yet. Training among monsters." Deep below the glowing cities of Vorthax, there was a chamber no map showed. They called it the Crucible. It wasn't made of metal or glass, but of ancient black stone. Colder than space, older than any empire, carved with the bones of fallen champions. This place wasn't for training. It was for changing what you were, and that's exactly why Zura brought Elias Kane here. "You're ready to train with the monsters," she said. Elias stared ahead. Across the black arena, 5 figures stood in silence. None of them looked alive. One was 9 feet tall, with obsidian skin and tentacles for arms. Another was covered in bone armor, eyes glowing green. One floated, limbless, humming in the air. The last 2 were silent twins fused at the spine, faces hidden under gold masks. "They're not just warriors," Zura said quietly. "They are experiments, hybrids, failures of old wars." "Why train with them?" Elias asked. "Because they're the worst the galaxy has made. And if you can survive them, you can survive anything." The first day nearly killed him. The floating creature struck with sound, sonic waves that cracked walls. Elias's ears bled. His bones shook. He passed out after 30 seconds. On the second day, the twins came. They moved without speaking, always in perfect sync. They stabbed him 23 times in under 2 minutes. When he collapsed, they dragged his body back to Zura, silent like shadows. But each time Zura brought him back. Each time, he stood, again, bruised, bleeding, limping, but never beaten. Weeks passed. Elias stopped flinching. He began to study their patterns. He tricked the twins by faking a fall, only to trip one and break the other's arm with a rock. He countered the sound beast by stuffing his ears with compressed gel and striking when it charged. He didn't grow stronger, just smarter, faster, and more dangerous. But it wasn't just the body they were training. At night, Zura tested his mind. She dropped him into mindscape simulations, forced hallucinations where his fears came alive. On one night, he stood in the ruins of Earth, cities burning, children screaming, old commanders accusing him. You failed. You left us. You let them win. Elias fell to his knees, but in the vision, Zura appeared. What are you? She whispered. He stood. Human, he said, and the illusion shattered. One day, while recovering from another brutal session, Elias sat beside Zura in the Crucible's resting chamber. His ribs were cracked, his eye bruised, but he was smiling. You're enjoying this? She asked, shocked. Pain means I'm still here. You're different now, she said, sharper, colder. You made me this. She looked at him. No, you were always this. I just gave you the right enemies. Word of Elias's survival spread through the underworld. They called him the Ghost from Terra. Bets doubled, sponsors whispered. Some demanded his death before the tournament, but none dared challenge him in the Crucible, because the monsters who trained with him now stepped aside when he walked in. Then came the final test. The arena was empty. No weapons, no light, just silence. Then a door opened, and a beast stepped out, bigger than any before. A mix of steel, flesh, and poison. It had no eyes, only teeth. It was called the Hollow King, a creature built by scientists who were later executed for creating something too cruel. No one had survived it. Zura spoke into Elias's earpiece. You don't have to do this. Yes, he replied. I do. Why? Because the galaxy thinks humans are extinct, broken, defeated. They forgot who we are. This will remind them, the Hollow King roared. Elias picked up a chain from the dirt and ran straight at it. The battle lasted 8 minutes. 8 minutes of horror. He was thrown against walls, choked, crushed, bit. But he didn't stop. He blinded it with debris, used its own body weight against it, slammed it into an energy spike. In the end, both were soaked in blood, but only one stood. Elias. After that, no one called him a slave again. He had trained with monsters and become something worse, something they couldn't control. As he limped out of the Crucible, Zura met him at the gate. She had tears in her eyes, but quickly wiped them. You're ready? She whispered. Elias looked up at the night sky above. I've always been ready, he said. They just didn't want to see it. That night, the tournament lords declared something that had not happened in 50 years. A human had officially entered the Tournament of Blood, and across dozens of star systems, crowds screamed his name, some in excitement, others in fear. Blood on the crown. The Tournament of Blood had no rules, no mercy, no second chances. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy came to Vorthax to watch warriors fight until one was crowned champion, or until all others were dead. But this year was different. This year a human was entering, a human who had trained among monsters, a human who had survived the Crucible, a human they couldn't break. Elias Kane stood in a long hallway made of black glass. Through the walls he could hear the roar of the crowd. Millions of aliens screamed from their seats. Some were drunk, some excited, some wanted to see him die. He didn't care. He tightened the straps of his armor. It was light, flexible, patched together from scraps, but it fit him like a second skin, and on his back he carried a curved blade made from the spine of the Hollow King, the beast he had killed in the Crucible. He looked over his shoulder. Zura stood behind him. No royal robe, no crown, just black armor and a short blade at her side. You don't need to fight, he said. You don't get to face this war alone, she replied. This isn't war. No, she whispered. It's worse. They entered the arena together. Blinding lights, thousands of eyes. A floating platform hovered overhead where the high lords of the tournament watched. Warlords, syndicate bosses, black market rulers, and at the center, wearing a tall iron crown, Zura's mother, Queen Vela of the Zarne Empire. Her face was emotionless, but her eyes burned with rage. Her mother's here, Elias muttered. I know, Zura said, tightening her grip on her weapon. She wants me dead. Why? Because I brought you here. Because I disobeyed. Because I'm no longer her daughter. I'm her shame. The announcer's voice boomed. Welcome to the final round. Tonight one will rise. All others will fall. The crowd erupted. Entering the ring, the gladiator from the Ash Moons, Korgar the Brutal. A beast stepped forward, carrying 2 stone axes. His body was pure muscle. Scars covered his chest. Next, Lady Strix of the Blade Dancers, a tall alien woman floated onto the stage, her 6 arms spinning thin, glowing blades. Names followed. 7 warriors, all killers, all famous. And then, last, the human, the ghost of Terra, the monster slayer, Elias Kane. The crowd went silent, for a moment. Then chaos, cheers, boos, jeers, and something strange. A chant, Kani, Kani, Kani. Elias didn't smile, he just walked forward. The fight began with a roar. Blade Dancer Strix attacked first, spinning like a tornado. Elias dodged, ducked, and kicked her into the lava pit. Korgar swung both axes, but Elias rolled under them and cut the tendons in his legs. One scream later, Korgar was down. Blood covered the ground. The others fought each other in chaos. Screams, fire, lightning blasts. But Elias moved like he wasn't part of it. Calm, calculating. He didn't fight to win, he fought to survive, and survival was his specialty. As the dust cleared, only 2 remained. Elias, and a final challenger. Not a warrior, not even listed on the roster. From the shadows, a figure stepped into the arena, wearing a long cloak and golden mask. The announcer hesitated. This is not part of... But the voice from the floating platform cut him off. Queen Vela stood. He is my champion, she declared. He will finish this. The figure removed the mask. It was Zura's brother, Prince Zalith, twice her size, trained by the queen herself, and carrying a blade soaked in poison. This isn't a tournament anymore, Elias said as they circled each other. No, Zalith smiled. This is an execution. He attacked fast, swinging the poisoned blade at Elias's neck. Elias blocked it. The second strike went for his chest. He parried again, but Zalith was strong, too strong. With a sudden charge, he slammed Elias backward into the wall. The crowd screamed. Blood dripped from Elias's mouth. Zalith raised his sword. Die, Terran. But the blade never came down. Zura jumped between them, her daggers flashing. Zalith caught her by the throat and threw her across the arena. Elias roared and charged, not with skill, with fury, with pain, with memory. He slammed into Zalith, breaking his jaw with a punch, dodged the poisoned blade, grabbed his arm, and drove the Hollow King's spine blade into his side. Zalith screamed and collapsed. Silence fell. Elias stood over the fallen prince, breathing hard. Then slowly, he turned and looked at the queen. Blood on his face, scars on his arms, and defiance in his eyes. Queen Vela rose. Everyone expected her to speak, but instead, she walked away without a word. Later in the quiet halls of the arena, Elias sat beside Zura. Her arm was broken, her ribs bruised, but she smiled through the pain. You could have killed him, she said. I did, Elias replied. Just not the way they wanted. What now? He looked at the crown, still lying in the arena dirt. They wanted to crown a champion, he said. But I'm not their champion. I'm their warning. That night, no crown was given, no anthem played, no throne claimed, but across the galaxy, the story spread. A human had entered the tournament, and he had changed the game forever. The arena roars his name. The arena should have gone silent, but it didn't. Not after Elias Kane defeated Prince Zaleth. Not after the crown lay untouched, in the dust. Instead, a strange thing happened. The crowd stood not for blood, not for victory, but for something they hadn't seen in decades, a human who refused to kneel. And then, the chanting began, low at first, then louder, then a thunder across the entire stadium. Kane, Kane, Kane. Across the galaxy, millions watched the feed live. Pirates, scholars, slaves, generals, politicians, on planets where human survivors lived in hiding, children cried as they saw his face. On warships where humans were still prisoners, guards lowered their guns in awe. One message spread faster than light. A human stands again. Back inside the arena, Zura helped Elias walk out of the blood-soaked sands. His body ached. His bones screamed. But he didn't fall. He had survived every beast, every trap, every royal execution. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Hours later, in the war court chamber above the arena, the High Lords met. There were 16 of them. Leaders of systems, lords of death, emperors of black markets. And now, they all faced a single problem, a problem named Elias Kane. This cannot continue, spat Lord Vryn, whose face was a floating cube of energy. The human must be erased. We made him a spectacle, growled General Korvac, tapping metal fingers on the table. Now he's a symbol. Symbols become revolutions, said another. Queen Vela, silent till now, rose. We allowed a mistake. Now we must correct it. By killing him? One lord asked. No, Vela said, by shattering his name. The plan was set. The next fight would be a special round, not in the tournament, not bound by law. They would throw everything at Elias, not to kill him quickly, but to break him. On the battlefield, on the screen, before the entire galaxy. Zura stood beside Elias as she read the message. They're going to make you fight again, she said. Off record, no rules, no limit. Elias didn't blink. When? Tomorrow. He nodded. Elias, she said, gripping his arm. This isn't about survival anymore. They don't care who wins. They want to humiliate you. Bury you. He looked into her eyes, calm. Then let them try. The next day, the crowd gathered again. But this time it wasn't celebration. It was war. Fire burst from the arena walls. Fighters stormed the sands, 10 of them. Assassins. War beasts, even 2 enhanced humans. Broken slaves forced to serve as machines. The announcer didn't speak. This wasn't a show. This was execution. Elias walked in with no armor, just a blade, and a face that showed no fear. As the enemies closed in, he did not run. He walked, straight at them. The first attacker, a giant wolf lizard, lunged. Elias ducked, slid under its stomach, and drove his blade up into its heart. 1 down. He spun, disarmed the next fighter, and used the enemy's own weapon to break their neck. 2. The third and fourth came together, twins again, but Elias remembered the crucible. He feinted a stumble, then flipped one over and drove the other into a wall. 3. 4. The crowd didn't cheer. They watched in stunned silence. This wasn't a man. This was a storm, a force of memory, of pain, of revenge. The enhanced humans were next. They wore masks, wires in their spines. They attacked fast, brutal, but not free. Elias didn't kill them. He disabled their suits, crushed the control nodes. They collapsed, whispering, "Thank you." Now only one remained, a warlord from the metal moons. 10 feet tall, armored like a tank. He laughed. "You've done well, Terran," he said. But I've killed 5 of your kind. Then you know how this ends, Elias replied, and he threw his blade, not at the warlord's head, but at the weak joint in the knee. The beast screamed. Elias ran, leapt, and slammed a metal beam into the warlord's skull. It cracked and fell. The arena went quiet again. Elias stood alone, bleeding, burned, but alive. From the royal box above, Queen Vela rose. Her face was pale, for the first time, uncertain. She looked to the lords. They looked away. They had failed. Again. And then something none of them expected happened. Elias Cain raised his hand, not in salute, not in victory, but in silence. The crowd responded, not with cheers, not with claps, but with quiet fists raised in the same way. Across the galaxy, millions mimicked the gesture, not as fans, as believers. Later that night, Elias sat alone in the chamber below. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from memory. He remembered Earth, his squad, his mother's voice before his first deployment. If they take everything from you, make sure they never take your name. Zura entered quietly. They're offering you the throne now, she said. They want to crown you, make you the champion of the tournament. Why? He asked. Because they fear what happens if you walk away with nothing. Elias looked at the floor, then stood and whispered, I don't want their crown. He stepped back onto the arena stage one last time. The crown was placed in front of him. The cameras watched. Billions of eyes waited, and he did the unthinkable. He picked up the crown, held it high, then threw it into the fire. The flames ate it instantly. Gasps. Chaos. Some screams. But no one moved. No one dared. I'm not your champion, he said, his voice echoing. I'm not your pet. I'm not your prize. I'm human, and I will not kneel. That night, the arena didn't roar his name. The galaxy did. He was the prize. Now he's the legend. The crown burned for 6 hours, not because of its material, but because of what it meant. In the tournament's 1,000-year history, no victor had ever refused it. No warrior had ever walked away from glory. Until now, Elias Cain had taken their prize and thrown it into the fire, and in doing so, he became something more dangerous than a champion. He became a legend. The galaxy trembled. News feeds repeated his words 1 billion times. I'm human, and I will not kneel. Slave colonies replayed the footage on hidden projectors. Prisoners in deep mines carved his name into stone walls. Even soldiers of enemy empires whispered it around fires, not as a curse, as hope. Deep inside the Zarne royal chamber, Queen Vela paced alone. He should have died, she hissed. But fear crept behind her voice. The council had gone quiet. Lords, who once demanded Elias's death, now watched him from afar, waiting. Unsure, he had survived every trap, turned every defeat into fire. And now, they couldn't control him. In the underworld of Vorthax, riots began, not of rage, but of belief. Low-born aliens carried signs, "Free the human." Warriors painted their faces with red scars, Elias's signature. Even syndicate bounty hunters refused contracts against him. He had become something bigger than any empire. He was a symbol. Meanwhile, Elias walked through the lower cities. No guards, no weapons. Beside him walked Zura, cloaked and armed. You shouldn't be out here. She whispered. They need to see me, he replied. You think they'll protect you? He shook his head. I don't want protection. I want them to see I'm not afraid. A child ran up to him, an alien girl with violet skin and sharp teeth. She held out a scrap of paper, on it in shaky letters. You are not broken, took it gently. His fingers trembled. For a moment he had no words. Then he knelt down, looked into her eyes and whispered, Neither are you. That night Zura and Elias returned to the Crucible. the place where it all began, the same cracked floor, the same cold air. But now, the silence was heavier. "They're going to strike again," Zura said. "I know. They won't use blades. This time, they'll use lies." The next day, broadcasts accused Elias of treason. Edited videos claimed he worked with rebels. Newspapers said Zura had betrayed her empire, but no one believed it, because people had seen the truth. In his wounds, in his silence, in the fire that ate the crown. Queen Vela, desperate, called a final council. "We must crush him," she roared, "before he becomes untouchable." But before she could finish, her own general stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "the army won't move against him." "Why not?" "Because half of them are wearing red scars." Her hands shook. "Then we'll kill the girl," she snapped. "The traitor princess." The general bowed his head. "She vanished, Majesty." "Last seen beside the human," Vela screamed, slamming her fists into the throne. The room remained silent. No one offered support. No one looked her in the eye. She had lost the room. In the dark, on a forgotten moon where no law reached, Elias and Zura hid in an abandoned outpost. It was once a human listening post, long since destroyed. The walls still carried old flags, faded names, messages scratched by dying soldiers. Zura stood by a broken window. "What now?" Elias stared at the stars. "We don't win by killing them all," he said. "We win by reminding the galaxy what we are." "And what's that?" He looked at her. "Not extinct." Word spread that Elias was building something. A network, not an army, a resistance. Humans who had survived in silence began to rise. Former prisoners, lost soldiers, forgotten scientists. They came in ones and twos. Some were broken, but Elias welcomed them all, not as tools, as people. And then, it happened. A message sent across the galaxy. From Elias himself. Simple, honest, direct. I was their trophy, their bait, their dog. But I stood. And now I will walk across this galaxy, not as a warrior, but as a reminder. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans fight. And we are not done. Governments banned the message, but they couldn't stop it. It spread through ship radios. It played on illegal terminals. It was carved into the walls of prisons. His words became banners, tattoos, war cries. Zura stood beside him one evening, watching hundreds of humans arrive at their outpost. "You were a soldier," she said. "Now look at you." He shook his head. "I'm still a soldier," he said. "But now, I finally know why." In a hidden chamber below, they lit a fire, not for warmth, but for memory. They threw in the old rags from the tournament, the collars, the chains, the broken blades, and above the flames, they raised a new banner, black cloth, a red mark in the center, a scar, the mark of survival. Queen Vela was overthrown within weeks. The High Lords lost their thrones. Syndicates turned on each other, not because Elias ordered it, but because the people no longer feared them. They feared silence. And Elias Kane had taught them to raise their voice. He was once the prize. Now, he was the fire that lit a galaxy.